towards the end of the third
Okay.
of the third moonwalk on that mission,
Yeah.
David Scott, he comes before the camera, takes a hammer and a feather, right, and drops them both at the same height at the same time to try to prove that Galileo was correct, that if there is no air, because a long time ago Galileo worked out that it doesn't matter how heavy an object is, it's what it matters is that the air resistance is, stopping the feather, stopping the feather from hitting the ground before the hammer does, basically.
So they actually held a feather and a hammer up and dropped them at the same time, did they?
Yeah, basically that's what he did allegedly
Wow.
in the videos.
Is that on YouTube? Can we watch that footage on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. In fact, I have a video where I actually disprove this video. It's called "A Puff Hitting Happened on the Way to the Moon."
Okay.
Yeah, the air resistance obviously is great with a feather at a very light weight. Where a hammer it's not. But if you're in a complete vacuum, mass is mass, and mass will fall at the rate of gravity. So that's the test. Now, this 1 inch thing that the glove can't grab. Now, is that you can't pick something up that's smaller than 1 inch? Or you're saying that the fingers of the glove will not close closer than 1 inch?
Yeah, they won't grip anything.
They won't come together. They won't come together.
They won't come together.
Not in any way.
Not in any way. The smallest thing you can grab is only 1 inch.
Okay, well, I'll have to take. I'm going to check that out, bud. And that's okay.
I would like to point out, though, a lot of people claim that the shuttle spacesuits are the same as the Apollo gloves, but they're not. The shuttle gloves are a major improvement over the Apollo gloves. In fact, on the more recent missions, the shuttle missions, remember the gloves on the shuttle have always been an improvement to those used on Apollo. Just to get the astronauts to grip, tiny screws, they actually had to add additional layers of turtle skin fabric into the fingertips just to increase grip.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, if you had to add all this additional layers onto the glove just so they can grab tiny screws, okay, well, why would you need to do that if you could already grab a feather?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair call. I mean, it's a similar size. Anyway, there was one question that you haven't talked about in the Mythbusters. Let's go to the shadows and let's see what it is that... did you think that was a fair test that they did with the shadows, the Mythbusters?
No, I didn't. The shadow, when they're actually filming the astronaut when he's standing in the shadow of the LEM.
This is the reflected light, yes.
Yeah, what they claimed that they were using an albedo of 7%. Well, I doubt they were using that. Okay, they said that they were using Portland cement and charcoal powder. Now, Portland cement that has an albedo of about 20 to 30%,
Quite
and
reflective.
even 90%.
The charcoal's meant to reduce that, but they would have. They were saying that they'd set that up to a standard. Now, I mean, you could say that it's more, it's less, or whatever. We don't really know.
Well, the point
that's not conclusive, is it?
They claim they worked it out with a light meter, but they never showed us the numbers on that light meter.
Okay, fair enough. But
now, if they wanted to accurately test the albedo. So if they wanted to actually accurately, simulate the conditions on the moon, all they would have needed to do was use asphalt, because asphalt has the same albedo of the moon's surface.
But
now,
which type of asphalt? Like, is it a certain mix? Like, can you be certain that that's the case?
Well,
that
yeah.
It's not a general...
If you go to the American Concrete and Pavement Association, you'll find they have a document which talks about the albedos of asphalt, like weathered asphalt has an albedo of 10 to 15%, and new asphalt has an albedo of 7 to 10%. 7 to 10 or 12%.
Okay, is there a way that you can test the lumens that are coming off that with some sort of test equipment? Have you done that? Have you actually tested your test case?
Well, I know. Well, I used asphalt in my test, because
I've seen your test, yeah, but it all gets down to semantics, and I mean, it all gets down to it's subjective because we don't know exactly whether what you're saying is right, and we don't know whether the asphalt's perfect. But to me, it's debunked because you get reflected light, and light refracts and reflects enough so that the subject can be illuminated in a situation where it's in shadow. Do you concede that?
No, I don't think so. What I've done is I did the experiment on asphalt, right, which we know has the same albedo as the moon. Okay. Now, to get the astronaut to be adequately lit up without any aid of any additional reflected light or anything like that, without the aid of any fill lights, okay, the only way to expose him correctly would be to open the aperture up all the way to f4. Okay,
yep.
And increase the shutter speed.
Mm-hmm.
But opening it up to f4 in general greatly overexposes the landscape. And
I saw that you did painstaking work there. I thought it was quite impressive. But we still don't have a test case that we can compare directly, and that's the problem I'm having.
Oh, look,
I'm not saying that you're not onto something.
The fact of the matter is, all I want. Why hasn't China taken a photo of this stuff? That's what I want to know. Why hasn't some other country taken a photo of the equipment that's left up on the moon? Why do we get 1 pixel, tiny little silly pixel? I mean, that's all I need. I just want one nice big photo, and that's what you were saying too, Harold, right?
Yeah, look, what we're on about here is truth and justice and, reality. Obviously, we could argue till the cows come home about the photographs. Most of it is about a gut feeling. I get a gut feeling from looking at them that they look like they were done in a studio. They're just too perfect, and a lot of people have said that. Then there are all these detailed questions you can have, and then people can debunk every single thing that you claim. Someone else can debunk it, and it's impossible for the average person to come and look at all that and work out what's true and what's false.
Normally,
and we're getting back into one of those micro arguments. Now, I watched your presentation on the shadows, on the illumination and the f-stops that you did on the street, and I thought you did it pretty well. It looked like you'd done everything you could to create a simulated environment. Now, within what you've got for your resources, your budget and everything. And compared to what the Mythbusters did, I think it's equally convincing what you've done. Now, it still doesn't prove it one way or the other, but there is an issue there. What I just remember from watching your piece is that when the camera is exposed for the road that you've got the astronaut, you've got this cardboard box, and you've got a toy spaceship and you've got a toy astronaut, and you've got the sun shining into the box, and you've got a camera at the other end of the box, and it's taking a photograph.
Yes.
And you've got you do it with several different f-stops. Now, when the camera is exposed for the background, which is the road surface, the astronaut is totally in darkness.
Yes.
When you've got the camera exposed for the astronaut, the road is totally overexposed. Now,
that's correct.
That you've done that experiment as well as you can. I'm not saying that it proves it, but I think, and John's questions are more about.
It makes me interested. It makes me interested. But what I'm saying is that in a certain situation, I believe, from what I've seen, that from what Mythbusters have presented and from what Jarrah's done, is it's possible that you could have a situation where the camera could take a photo and you get enough lighting from the residual light coming back off the surface to make it work. But whether or not that is the case in this situation, I can't say. I can't do the experiment. But I'm with Josh. I wonder why. We've now got a satellite cruising around the moon. Now, I believe we went to the moon, and I believe man went to the moon at this stage. But I'm interested in your arguments, and I'm not going to say you're nuts for having questions. But
thank you.
Urban, and I think the people online that do those sorts of things are, not helping anyone. I think they're the people that use the ad hominem, etc., and just knock people for having questions. I think it's ridiculous. Anyway, now we've got a satellite going around the moon at about 500 miles out. Is that correct, or is it closer than that?
Yeah, I believe it's around that.
Okay, now you said you're a photographer, so you have some expertise in this area. At this stage, considering the amount of weight they can lift into orbit around the moon, have they got the facility to take a shot so we could actually see these landers? Do you think that's possible?
Well, normally the explanation is as why we can't see any artifacts on the moon is normally they say, the resolution isn't enough to resolve the artifacts left on the moon. Now, the one that's currently up there, it's called the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Now, that one has a resolution of about 5 meters per pixel, which means the smallest object you can see is, not 5 meters, half a meter per pixel.
Half a meter, okay.
Yes. Yeah. The smallest object you can see is about half a meter wide. So each pixel represents half a meter. Okay.
That's not accurate enough for what we want.
Well, they say they've been hoping that it should have been able to see the lunar modules because they're like 4 or 5 meters wide, and you always see these tiny little pixels, which in fact resemble boulders. Now,
they're inconclusive.
What I'd like to point out as well is that if they wanted to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was anything up there, all they would need to do is go down to the Gemini Observatory. You see, I interviewed Joss Hawthorne, who was the Anglo-Australian Observatory's head of instrument science. I interviewed him in 2006. He specifically told me that they had a telescope at the Gemini Observatory that could see the artifacts left behind on the moon. He said all they needed was adaptive optics, to overcome the distorting effects of the atmosphere. You need these adaptive optics on the telescope to overcome this distortion, of the light shining through, like the twinkling, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyways, they've got these optics currently installed on the telescope, and I'm still waiting for them to find the module. I have never received any word on them finding anything.
And there does seem to be some silence around some of these issues, which intrigues me.
Yeah, but honestly, these 0.5 of a meter per pixel photography kits, they're basically set up for like Google Earth style, massive, vast area photography. Why can't we just zoom in and to exactly that spot and just take a good shot? I mean, it's just obscene, folks.
Look, I just can't believe, because I know that satellite imagery is very, very high resolution. I just don't understand why we can't get high-res images. Don't understand that.
Yeah. Anyways, at the bottom line is, what I would like to point out is the fact that the LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, at the end of the day, even if it does have any good photographs, at the end of the day, it's not it's not an independent verification because it's a NASA spacecraft.
Well, indeed. What about the Japanese and the Chinese? Because they've both had satellites up there, haven't they?
Well, yeah, they do have satellites up there, but unfortunately, the Japanese are part of NASA's international network. You see, they were all working together on the International Space Station, and the Chinese, they're America's best free trade partners. Now, a number of independent private companies have actually, gone into space now, joining the space race. If a private company who is completely devoid of any connections with NASA is able to photograph the artifacts on the moon, then we'll have the independent verification that we need.
Okay.
So far, there hasn't been any independent verification.
Okay, the objects are visible. The locations on the moon are visible from the Earth. I'm not quite sure what so the moon always faces the Earth. Is that right? And
that's correct.
It doesn't rotate on its own axis.
Right. Yeah.
The rotation of the moon takes exactly the same as it takes to orbit the Earth. So
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we always see this one side.
And it's exactly the right distance to cause the solar eclipse, which is also very strange. But it's all part of the.
Yeah, that's an odd one, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly the right.
It's a fascinating thing, the moon.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we should be able to see those images either from an Earth-based telescope or what about the Hubble?
Well, they always claim that the Hubble. It's an interesting story behind that. They actually said that the Hubble could see a firefly. We'll see it make out the light from a firefly at the distance of the moon, but they say no, it doesn't have enough resolution. They say the smallest object you can see is only about 60 meters wide, which is obviously too big to see anything.
Okay, well, gee, it'd be a great project for someone, for some country to do, to just get something up there so we could have a look at. It'd be a great propaganda victory again, I think, to be able to see. I mean, the buggy. I mean, there's a buggy up there, isn't there, supposedly?
Yeah, there was 3 lunar rovers. Yeah. 3 lunar rovers that they brought up there.
Yeah, now I had this question, right?
Yeah. How did they get it out of there?
How the hell did they get the buggies up there? These things are massive.
Yeah, the buggy, basically, from what I understand, the wheels, they fold inward, and it's mounted on the one side of the lunar module. It doesn't actually go in the cabin.
So it was actually mounted. Okay, right.
It's mounted on the side of the lunar module.
They didn't have to pull it out, yeah.
What's like IKEA style, flat packed.
There's one note here that I've got that I think we should point out, that it was something I disagree with you said earlier about the structure of the module. Now, you were saying that the heat could be transferred. Now, the only energy that you can get from the sun without any atmosphere or in a vacuum is purely, it must be radiated, so the light must hit the surface. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if no light gets inside the module, then it doesn't get hot.
Well, it hits the side of the module, right?
It hits the aluminium, but if there's 2 layers of aluminium and there's a vacuum in between, then it doesn't transfer. Is that right?
Actually, no. There's a vacuum in between the shuttle spacesuits. There's no vacuum in between the Apollo spacecraft.
Okay, so what did it have? It was obviously a bi-layered structure, wasn't it? There was 2 layers.
Yeah,
it was just an
essentially
air.
Basically a steel frame covered in foil, basically.
Okay, but was there 2 layers of foil?
It was as thick as 2 layers of foil. I don't know if they had 2 layers of foil on it. But
well, they must have, or it would have got very, very hot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have gone very hot, yeah.
But the reflectivity of the foil, it was specifically designed to reflect heat and not retain it, wasn't it?
Well, even if you reflect the heat, there's still going to be an amount that gets through. In fact, Collins once said that without any way to cool the thing, an astronaut would actually dissolve in a pool of sweat. Because
when you heat something up in the oven and you've got tin foil around it, does get hot, doesn't it? So I'm just questioning. I think you made that argument a little bit too strong. From my point of view, like with what we've been doing with the 9/11 Truth Movement, we're very, very cautious about making statements that are in any way dubious, because we've got some really serious evidence, and I think you've got a few things that have got me interested. I'm still not convinced, but anyway.
Well, if you want really physical evidence, you just look back to Gemini 12 when Buzz Aldrin nearly burned himself against the zipper on his
Well, of course the
spacesuit.
zipper's going to get hot, but he wasn't meant to be leaning against it, was he?
No, I wasn't meant to be leaning against it, but even so, an astronaut can get extremely hot doing very simple tasks in the Gemini.
Well, he can't get rid
station.
of the contained heat energy from his body, and that was what we were talking. You were mentioning about the air conditioning system that and then purges the moisture so that he doesn't fog up. I mean, yeah, it's all very, very complicated stuff. But I mean,
They
Herod
need
made
some Gore-Tex. That's what they need.
well, they've invented Velcro for the NASA program, but that's something that's become very useful.